Alrighty, y'all. Hello. Why doesn't the U.S., the United States, have an Autobahn? Well, of course we have highways. Let me rephrase that. Why don't we have a no speed limit sections or highway in general like they do in Germany? Now, we've learned about Germany's Autobahn. Of course, every car guy usually knows about it. It's awesome, and of course, I dream on driving on it one day. And quite frankly, the U.S., which loves to pride itself on being, the best and freedom and everything's bigger and better here, doesn't a no speed limit highway kind of sound like it should be an American thing? Now, of course, I'm kidding, but I mean, it would fit the brand, you would think. Instead, our highways are not speed limit free. They vary by state. But some states have cops posted very often to try and catch speeders so they can, of course, write you a fancy, hefty ticket, AKA you don't have the freedom to speed here. So let's take a look at this. It should be interesting. I actually did a paper on this in my first year of university at college. So this will be pretty interesting to me. This comes to us from CNBC. It'll be linked in the description down below. So you can check this out uninterrupted and browse their channel. I also want to apologize ahead of time. I do have the sniffles. My sinuses are really, really rough right now, really stuffed up, lots of pressure, kind of. So, yeah, I feel like the last 7 or 8 months, every month, we're sick in our house. I don't know what's going on. Has it been like that for you? I certainly hope not. Let's go ahead and get into this.
Audi, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Porsche. These cars have made Germany famous for automotive engineering, and they are fast and powerful enough for these equally famous German roads, which are unlike any other in the world.
I admire
the Autobahn.
And it's funny because a lot of people watching this, if you're in Germany or maybe from a neighboring country and you get to ride on the Autobahn quite frequently, it might not, hit the same for you. You might not think much of it, but from afar, I look at this beautiful road, beautiful countryside, and that freedom to go as fast as you want, but within reason, right? The thing is, you have to be very careful. You have to take it seriously. You have to take road conditions and weather conditions seriously. So it's not a free-for-all, but it's the ability to be like, okay, if you're careful and you have everything dialed in and you have your car up to snuff, you can go very fast and get to where you're going efficiently. I like that. And I freaking admire it. So when I see the Autobahn, I just am overcome with this wow, this greatness. Man, I wish we had this.
National highway system with no top speed limit.
Damn.
If you love cars, chances are driving the Autobahn as fast as you can is one of the things you want to do before you die.
Being able to actually put your vehicle to the test and really show its full potential is
a dream.
Is the ultimate.
They're right. That is the car guy's dream. I've dreamt that from when I was a kid. I didn't know much about Europe until I started this channel. That's what I do, is I study other countries. But I did know, of course, just from movies and media and probably my parents, that, Autobahn has always been famous for go fast.
Everything about the Autobahn
knew that when I was a kid.
To Germany's unique and difficult history.
So there's this kind of bizarre Cold War moment when German lawmakers argue that being a free citizen, somebody who is not living in a totalitarian dictatorship, has to be able to drive as fast as they want.
So why doesn't the US or any other country in the world have an Autobahn? And is it really all it's cracked up to be?
Well, that's a very simple but a great question. That I've always wondered as well. I guess, of course, from a me perspective, it'd be easy to ask, why doesn't the U.S. have an Autobahn, no speed limit sections of highways? That would be obvious, and I have wondered that. I've also wondered, though, broadening out, how come it's only in Germany, right? The world's a big place. There's literally almost 200 countries or whatever on Earth. As far as I know, Germany is the only one that has a very nicely constructed highway with no speed limit in certain sections. Why isn't that more common, right? Even just throughout Europe. It is kind of odd, but why isn't it a thing here? It's frustrating. But I can think of some reasons. Our drivers are not.
First things
Not well
first,
here.
What is the Autobahn? The full name is actually Bundesautobahn,
More on that later.
which simply means federal highway.
Yeah.
It is a more than 8,000-mile system of limited
Jeez.
access freeways that run all throughout Germany.
I've actually, if I have, I must have forgotten. I actually haven't seen this full-on system laid out like this. It's more extensive than I thought. Wow. That's pretty cool.
The word Autobahn is often just translated as motorway.
Right.
In simple design terms, it's quite similar to freeways in the United States.
Yeah.
Limited access means cars and trucks only.
Yeah.
No pedestrians, no
Right.
bicycles, no skateboards, nothing other than cars.
Right.
There are designated entry and exit points and no stoplights or intersections. The roots of the Autobahn go back all the way to the early 20th century, but really, the first big step in its growth happened under Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
There really was no need for it at all. Few Germans owned cars. Most took public transit, which was plenty fast and got people to where they needed to go.
Right.
The Autobahn's real potential.
Well, wasn't it constructed back then probably more for military interests, right? And ammunition and military equipment moving. That's what I would
as
imagine.
propaganda.
They want
Oh,
to build a sort
okay.
of a futuristic mega project, something that would lend itself to, talking about the regime as a modern, forward-looking regime. At the
Okay,
same time,
okay.
while he was, politically speaking, a very repressive, totalitarian dictatorship, right? It was about symbolizing power, the conquest of space.
By the end of World War II, there were less than 4,000 kilometers built, about 2,500 miles. It was really from the 1960s through the 80s that the Autobahn system we know today was properly developed.
Dude, look at all the Beatles in one shot. That is crazy.
This
Pretty
was obviously
interesting.
a time when the Federal
That doesn't happen
Republic
much.
became sort of an affluent Western liberal democracy and also much more of a consumer society. So people actually began to own cars in much higher numbers.
The post-World War II era is also when the Autobahn gained its most famous trait: long stretches with no speed limits. During the
Wow.
Nazi era, the speed limits were mainly to conserve fuel for the war effort. But then,
In a really astonishing move, the federal parliament in 1952 decides to abolish all speed limits, not just on the Autobahn, but on any kind of highway and in urban areas as well. And you can imagine the
What?
results, especially in cities, right? With cars going as fast as they want.
Whoa. Hold up. Like, I could see on the whole Autobahn network, okay, right? Little crazy, but like, okay, it makes sense. It's a high-speed road, only cars and trucks allowed. No, nothing else to worry about. Okay. No speed limits on smaller roads and urban roads and urban centers? Now that sounds absolutely chaotic, to put it friendly. What in the hell were they thinking with that?
crashes, injuries, and fatalities all rose until the government started reinstating limits on roads. It mostly left the
Jeez.
Autobahn alone. Mostly. Today, speed is regulated on about
Yes.
40% of the motorways. Some limits are fixed, others are dynamic, changing according to conditions. On the rest of
that
the
makes
freeway,
sense.
the recommended speed limit is about 80 miles per hour. That means if you get into a crash at a speed above that, you can be held liable for the accident.
Oh,
My
okay.
parents commute regularly from Nuremberg to Munich, and my mom will drive 100 miles an hour, and it's not a big deal.
It's not that unusual to just travel somewhere at 200 kilometers an hour, which
That's
is
awesome.
around 125 miles an hour. But
I mean, that sounds so nice to me. You can get places so much faster than doing 65 miles an hour or 70. Honestly, it's so slow for the, like, U.S. highways are so big and wide open. And, some county roads in the middle of nowhere or some main roads, even in a suburban area, you're doing 55. But then you get on this wide open, away from town, you get on this wide open 6-lane wide mega road, mega highway, and you can still only go 65 or 70. It feels like so sluggish to me. And some people like this. Keep in mind, when I did this report in school, I was for having higher speed limits or no speed limit. Of course, reference Germany's Autobahn quite often in that. And because I see benefits from it, and I see more of a incentive to pay the hell attention to what you're doing while you're driving. No eating a cheeseburger and doing your makeup and talking or watching TikToks when you're doing 120 miles an hour. The car, you're feeling that velocity. You're hearing the wind. You're hearing the tires. You better be locked in. It kind of, in my opinion, ignites something in you where, okay, I got to be careful, right? If you're going at a leisurely 60 or 65 miles an hour on such a big road, it feels small. It feels slow. And it just, people get too comfortable, and I think they drive worse. That was my argument. Maybe it's flawed. I caught a lot of slack from people in class acting like it was so dangerous to go above 65. I don't know. Call me crazy. That's fine. But that's what they do in Germany. And last time I checked, which I did cite in that report, German drivers appear to be way better per capita than American drivers. And, statistics on the highways seem to be way better as well when it comes to safety and stuff like that. So,
all things considered,
it is what
on
it is,
average,
right?
I would say it's probably best to imagine Autobahn traffic somewhat like driving through Texas, maybe, or through Kansas. People don't drive slow. It's quite fast all the way around, but it's not recklessly fast. It's not race car fast.
German race car driver Rudolf Caracciola is still believed to hold the record for the fastest speed ever recorded on the Autobahn, 268.8 miles per hour. But others have come quite close, such as a Bugatti Chiron that hit 257 in 2021.
I saw that video.
I have driven a BMW
That was
B7,
wild.
It's an Alpina 600 horsepower sedan.
Damn.
I drove that 170 on the Autobahn. That's the fastest I've driven. It was difficult to do, by the way.
I'd rather not talk about the fastest I went, even though it's legal to do
Yeah.
so. Let's just say I once went 4 towns away from us by accident. I didn't want to go that far, but I was just going a little too quickly.
Yeah, let me stress something. So obviously this is not real life, but like if I was a lawmaker right now in my state and I could just magically say, you know what, Illinois, no speed limit anymore, go as fast as you want. Obviously I wouldn't literally be advocating like, hey, take your car as fast as you can possibly push it, right? To where it's like totally redlined out in top gear. Your tires probably aren't even rated for that speed, right? Let's just go super fast. Woohoo, right? Like, no, that's not what's implied when you have no speed limit. It just means that you're free to go within reason a lot faster than the previously very slow speed limits. If you can go 100 miles per hour, which most cars can certainly do pretty safely, that's going to get you a lot further, faster than going 65, right? If you don't want to go that fast, you stick to the right lane. Maybe you want to get better fuel mileage. Of course, you're going to get better fuel mileage at 65 miles per hour than you would at 100. So I could see both ways. That's why you have to have discipline. That's why lane discipline and lane logic and laws should be a thing as well. It is a thing here. You're only supposed to pass on the left. And if you're a faster, driver, as in you're going the speed limit or maybe slightly above within the kind of window where they don't bother you, then you're in the middle lane or the left lane to pass. You're not in the right lane. If you're a slow driver on the highway here, you're supposed to be in the right lane. Now, unfortunately, in practice, it doesn't usually work like that. You have slow and fast people mixed everywhere. You have people passing on the right, which you're not supposed to do. And that's why we can't have the no speed limit, because the discipline, the lane discipline and the driving knowledge and discipline isn't really there here on a mass scale, unfortunately.
Automakers don't necessarily make their cars specifically for the Autobahn, but the demands of high-speed environments like these highways do influence their engineering decisions and marketing. Mercedes refers to their cars as Autobahn proven.
Yeah.
Driving at high speed is not a video game. It should be relaxed cruising. Yeah. And the big challenge for us is controlling the energy in the car, which increases with the square of speed. And that becomes very important at speeds over about, I would say, 60 miles per hour.
It starts with aerodynamic designs, but axles, suspension systems, springs, dampers, roll bars, the tires, the braking systems are all tuned to perform at this level.
That's awesome.
Tune the vehicle safety, the comfort, and agility Yes, to deliver a typical Mercedes-Benz driving character at high speeds.
Mercedes even has an onboard system designed to keep the car on course when it is hit from the side by a strong gust of wind.
Wow,
Even
that's
with
impressive.
startling events like, for example, powerful wind gusts. So our aim is to keep the car stable and safely on course at high speed without permanent steering correction.
God, look at the interior of these Mercedes. Holy smokes, they're a different level. Damn.
While damping out bothersome chassis motions, and the car will always support the driver by being tolerant of mistakes.
To understand why Germany is basically the only country in the world with a mostly unregulated highway like this, it is probably best to look at what makes Germany's driving laws and car culture so different from, say, the supposedly freedom-loving United States.
First, I'm glad you worded it like that. Yeah, I've said this has been a theme on my channel since the beginning. Look, I love this place. There's a lot we do well here. There's a lot I love about America, blah, blah, blah. That's very true. There's also a lot I'm annoyed at here. I'm so annoyed at growing up hearing we're the best at everything when we're not. And I'm annoyed about saying, like, we're the freest country in the world. Now, there is some very freedom-aligning things that we have to be proud of here. I understand that. There's also some things where it's, like, almost hilarious and hard to take seriously that you can't do here. That is like, how the hell is this free if I can't even walk across the street? That's illegal here. You have to be in the exact spot and wait for the sign to say you could cross. If it's clear, there's not a car in sight, you can't cross the street. That's jaywalking here, and that's a ticketable offense. What kind of free country is that? Anyway, I digress.
It's a lot harder to drive a car in general in Germany. You can't get a license in the country until the age of 18.
Okay.
In the U.S., the law
here.
varies, but in most states, people can obtain learner's permits at 15 and receive licenses allowing them to drive legally under at least some conditions by the age of 16.
Right.
It is also far more expensive and challenging to obtain a license. Many hours of instruction are required, and the tests are demanding.
It's much.
You know what? I got to take like a mock test, like a driving test type of stuff for Germany or really any European country. I think that would be interesting. Let me know if I should do that. I think I should. Testing here, I think it's like good enough, but it's not super rigorous, like 40 questions or less maybe. And then, like I said, the driver's test is like very easy. And it's pretty easy to get your license here, and it's very cheap as well. So,
it's more difficult, it's more expensive.
I think that's a big difference.
You know, a lot of people fail their driving tests, myself included.
Fees for a license and all of the associated instruction in Germany can run 2,500 to 3,500 euros when you add up the costs. The fee for a driver's license in the state of California is $45.
Yeah.
But that state, as is common in the US, requires driver education classes as well. Then, the certification process for your car in the country is also extremely stringent.
Yeah.
I had to get my 500 euro minivan through it. It was not easy. And that sort of makes the Autobahn feel safer. You know,
that to me totally makes sense. It's a little intimidating hearing like, okay, you got to have everything in line. You got to make sure you got to spend the money and have the know-how to make sure your car is really ready for, you know, the TÜV, is that what it's called or whatever? I might be getting her name wrong, but yeah, just basically getting it ready for testings and inspections to make sure your car is up to snuff and running properly and it's not dangerous, right? It's not in horrible shape or having the wheels about to fall off, right? I totally get it. That's why you're able to have roads like the Autobahn, because you know that the cars, you know, basically all cars should have been tested pretty recently and they're good to go. Whereas in the U.S., it depends. Some places are strict, but that's harder to come by. In my area, you just you pay to get the plates and a sticker registration for your car. You're good to go. No one checks your car. It could literally be cut in half in the parking lot and they don't see it and they don't care. If you pay, they'll hand you the plates for it. So there's no testing of any sort. And on one hand, it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. It's easy, right? No worries. On the other hand, there is worries because how do you know the person coming up behind you at a red light has brakes that work? You don't know. You don't know if the car next to you is rusty and going to split in half, you know? That's the scary part. That unregulated cars on the road in the U.S. is another reason why we can't have an Autobahn, because if you let anyone take any rinky-dink rusty car on the road, it could be a hazard and cause an accident. So that's not good.
You're surrounded by cars that have been rigorously checked. A lot of cars here in the States, especially in the Rust Belt, would probably not be fit for the Autobahn.
No.
Having such barriers in the U.S. would really limit the number of people and cars who can drive in a country that is right now far more car dependent than Germany is. Americans drive about twice as much as Germans.
Yeah.
Germany is a much more urbanized country. There's lots of people who live in major cities who don't even have a driver's license. They get around using public transit and use rail.
Then there is the cost of this. A lot of engineering goes into keeping these motorways drivable at these speeds. The pavement is extremely smooth and is more or less constantly maintained. That's expensive.
Yep. That is complete opposite of here. The roads here are terrible. And they're always under construction, but in a bad way. They're never done. They're never, ever done. There's a section of highway by my house that has been under construction for 7 years. Still not done. Great job, Illinois. Great job.
The German government spends 5 times more on the Autobahn than it does on its other federal highways.
If you look at the average American freeway or interstate, you will usually just find concrete surfaces. And in Germany, it's way more intricate than that. You can drive through the pouring rain on modern strips of Autobahn that were recently redone, and you don't have any spray whatsoever. You can travel at very high speeds through the pouring rain, and that is no issue at all.
It's amazing.
Though the U.S. population is far larger
Wow.
than Germany's, building up a highway system that could realistically handle such high speeds would require much investment. And U.S. infrastructure suffers both criticism and financial insecurity.
Ah, yes, the U.S.
The thing is,
we always, when it comes to public transportation and roads and anything that would help the people out, we can't afford it. It's too expensive. The American go-to. Love
Tracy
it.
says, Americans might not be missing as much as they think they are.
I have found that the reality is it's a little bit anticlimactic in a way. It's just not quite what you want it to be.
Just because there is no speed limit doesn't mean you will always be able to drive fast. Across Germany, there were about 516,000 traffic jams in a single year.
Yeah.
The number of hours Germans spend in traffic has been rising. Several highways had traffic jams that were longer than 40 miles.
It's under construction.
Okay, good to know. It's always good to hear both sides. Even negatives to what should be a lot of pros for something, but unfortunately, we have tons and tons of traffic jams all over the U.S., even on road trips, in different states. Traffic jams always happen around any sizable city in the U.S., and they're bad. They're really bad. I don't even want to go into story time. Maybe another time I will. But trust me, I just went through a 4.5-hour traffic jam to get, I think we traveled 30 miles. 30 miles in 4.5 hours. Yeah. U.S. traffic's great.
Construction a lot. It makes sense. If you have an unrestricted highway, it has to be perfect. You can't have
this was on the highway, by the way.
Like in Detroit, where I used to live. If you had one of those potholes on the Autobahn, you'd see cars getting air.
Germany's Autobahns are also major thoroughfares for international commerce.
Germany is kind of right smack dab in the center there of Europe. It's sort of this connector between East and West, even North and South. So you see a lot of commerce. A lot of trucks are traveling on that Autobahn, and they are not fast.
If you come to Germany and expect a large and vast countryside and you can go wherever as fast as you like, then you might get disappointed because it's quite crowded and we have large cities.
The absence of speed.
So I get what they're saying. That's a valid criticism, but it's kind of a moot point as well, right? It's like, okay, no one's expecting to come have their own, race on the Autobahn. We're like, oh, I'm going to go like an hour straight going top speed. Like, I don't think anyone really thinks that. That's more of a childlike way of thinking, right? Like, I just want to go to the Autobahn and have that freedom to go fast in a nice car. And, you take it up a little fast for just a little bit. And then you get it out of it and you go back to a fast and efficient speed. But, I would probably be hovering around 100 miles per hour, 110 at tops, right? Which is much faster than I'm used to here. So you would get places faster, but I wouldn't be sitting there being like, hey, why is everyone in my way? I can't do 190 miles per hour as long as I want to. Like, that's kind of unrealistic. No one expects that.
Speed limits on German motorways divides even German opinion. Polls have shown that a slight majority of Germans favor introducing a hard limit on the Autobahn for safety reasons
to
help the country hit environmental
unique.
goals. Speed does worsen the severity of crashes and raises the risks of injuries and deaths.
I think speed forces you to drive more carefully. I just think that's true. If you're going 60 miles per hour, which is really slow for a big road, people, at least here in the U.S., people get complacent. They get lazy. They put the cruise on and they try and do stuff they should not be doing while they're driving. And I feel like if you're going 100 or 120 miles per hour, you're not going to be doing that because you can't, right? You can't steer with your knee when around a curve on a highway when you're doing 110, right? While you're eating a burger and whatever else. That's just my take. Maybe I'm wrong.
These vehicle fatalities happen on rural roads, followed by urban ones. The share of motorway fatalities is also smaller than those in some other OECD countries, such as Slovenia, Luxembourg, and Belgium.
I guess there's studies supporting each side of that argument, but the numbers don't lie. You don't have much differences in fuel consumption, for example. It just doesn't make a whole lot of difference to drive 130 kilometers per hour or keep it open. And you also have to consider the fact that we don't always travel at full speed all the time.
Right.
There are also strict rules. The left lane is for passing. Unlike highways in many other countries, you cannot pass on the right. If someone is behind you in the left lane, you have to move over. Tailgating is a serious offense that comes with heavy fines.
Same here.
It's also for everybody a high responsibility. So that's why we are not allowed to pass on the right lane. You have to also adapt your speed.
Statistically speaking, Autobahns are safer than other roads, but that mostly has to do with the fact that there's only cars and only trucks. I mean, there are people who literally are afraid to drive on the Autobahn because of the lack of a speed limit.
In like manner, the data on how much introducing a speed limit would reduce carbon pollution has met with skepticism, though some recent numbers suggest it might be more than previously believed.
Anybody who owns an electric car will tell you, when they go fast on the highway, their range plummets.
Yeah, I didn't even think about EVs. I don't have an EV, so that's why I wouldn't think of that perspective, but that's interesting too. If you're trying to go fast, like I said, a reasonably fast speed, EVs just freak me out, and they have too many limitations. Your range is probably going to just plummet, right? Faster than your gas tank would in a combustion car.
BMW i3,
that's another
which was developed right there in Munich. And that car, I can drive it in the city and I'll go 180 miles in the city on a charge. But on the freeway, I'll do 115.
Yeah.
So in many ways, Americans envious of these German speedways might be missing out on a bit of fun, but it might also be true they are envious of something that is more myth than reality.
I think a lot of Americans probably would travel to Germany, they'd get a fast car, and they'd say, woo-hoo-hoo, let's do it.
How'd you know?
And then they'd be stuck behind a truck in traffic, and they'd be like, what the heck's going on?
I get what they're saying, but no, I disagree. I don't think, because I'm going to be in the left lane, I'll be in towards the left lane going fast and then left lane passing if I have to. I don't think there's going to be trucks in the left lane. Call me crazy. But I don't know. How did he know that? Yeah, I do want to do that, and I hope I get to someday. And I will, of course, I will embrace it, and I will have fun. And, of course, I'll be careful because that's the whole point I'm making is you are more careful when you go faster. And I see it as freedom to go a little faster in an efficient manner when it comes to time rather than crawling along at 60 miles an hour. I don't see it as an Autobahn where like, hey, let's go, so fast that our car's going to fall apart. No, that's not how I see it. I just see it as a better way of highways than we have here. I would love to see the comments on this. I know there's probably going to be people for both sides that Autobahns are awesome and the no speed limit zones are nice, and you can see a lot of net positives from it. And of course, I think it's equally, you could draw some net negatives from it or safety concerns or whatever, and that's fine. I think at the end of the day, the Autobahn is, people are jealous of it worldwide to some extent, and I think it has proved itself to be very efficient and pretty damn safe. especially for what it is, in my opinion. And the crazy part is I don't think I see anyone arguing that our slow American highways are safer than Germany's no-speed highways. I'm pretty sure Germany's Autobahn is safer. That's kind of mic drop at the end, isn't it? At least for me. That was a good one. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you watching. I think I do have to take a German driving test. I gotta look that up. I think that might be fun. Look for that soon. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Catch you later.